Hello and welcome to another episode of Test, Optimize, and Scale. Privileged to have Itay Golan here with us today, the founder and CEO of Gold Ego Funding, as well as Crowdfunding Finder. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Excellent. Itay, I know you're dialing in from New York today. Glad to see the city back open again.
It is. It's I think the week that it's actually really bars and restaurants, and don't take my word for it, but I do think that they even remove. So, it feels like back to life again.
That's what I've been hearing. I've been following some friends' Instagram stories. They've been hopping around from live conferences. We've already too, and excited to get back out there myself. I know we're mid-June, late June here in Los Angeles, and they just removed the mask mandate here too. So it's exciting to see the world and all aspects of the business community picking back up. And
absolutely.
And Itay, just for the listeners, could you give a bit of background on your story and your path to creating Gold Ego Funding?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Itay, that's my name. I'm a native of Israel. I've been in the U.S. for the past 16 years, and as an immigrant and a serial entrepreneur, I'm a constant dreamer. It's almost by default. And as someone who came up with several businesses and several business concepts in the past, and have developed several ventures in the past, I was always very frustrated with the lack of financing option for small businesses. So I thought that if the sharing economy enable us to share apartments like Airbnb and share rides like Uber, there should be a way to share ideas and share resources to start businesses. So fast forward 2015, the Jobs Act came with Title III, and that was the missing piece that I was looking for, because I learned that prior to the Jobs Act, SEC regulations just didn't allow that, didn't allow entrepreneurs to just share their ideas with the public and ask for contribution and solicit asset contribution. And with specifically Title III of the Jobs Act, it was relaxed. So when I learned about that, I thought it would be a great way to start a crowdfunding platform. So initially, I learned about the Jobs Act. I was very active and involved in the beginning, and I started a crowdfunding platform. But very soon later, I found out that there were many other portals that came up, and it actually made me think that maybe we need to change my mindset, right? I don't want to be just another portal, and of course I want to help small businesses, but I thought that the biggest value I can add is not just being another portal, but actually forming a marketplace that will help retail investors in the space and make it easier for them to navigate this still, nascent and confusing landscape of Title III investment crowdfunding.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate that focus on the investor. It has to be a win for all sides of the table. The issuers, the brands issuing stock on any one of these portals, the portals themselves, and all different businesses that are designed to accelerate the success rates across the board. But the investor, and I want to see more investor success stories across the board, more testimonials. I often hear notes of that lack of education. I myself am explaining to people, outside of the office, what equity crowdfunding is on a day-to-day basis. So definitely identify that need for more clarification, more instruction for retail and accredited investor audiences for that matter.
Absolutely. And this is part of what our marketplace does. So we're big on education. We have a Learn section where we teach Main Street investors everything that needs to be known about equity crowdfunding, about Title III, the risks associated with that, whether it's liquidity, whether it's just a time horizon of those investments. So we take a top-down approach. We first want our users to learn about the industry, get familiarized, get educated with that, because educated investors make better investors. And after they get familiarized with the landscape of Title III, we then offer them to see all the listings in the space. So we aggregate from around 60 FINRA regulated platforms, and we have currently over 1,000 listing on the website. So that's pretty much the service that we're providing to users. A, it's the educational aspect. B, it's to see everything under one roof, listing in one place. And to close it up, we're not just a marketplace, but we're also a social network. So you can think about it as Kayak meets TripAdvisor, right? So we don't only aggregate like flights, we don't only aggregate the issues, we also enable our community and our users. By definition, it's a community of retail investors, and we let them rate the offerings, we let them review the offerings. You could say like TripAdvisor, you can say like Rotten Tomatoes, whatever example you want to use, but basically we're big believers in crowd wisdom. So we're just serving as the platform where it happens. We're not a registered investment advisor. We're not there to push a specific issue or issuer or promote any one individual offering. We are there to really let our user base, our community, engage with one another, so a retail investor can connect and network with their peers, join blogs, join chats, participate in webinars that we host, and then we do a lot of services that just help reinforce the education and learning about the offering. So, it's still the community's role to enrich each other with their ideas and reviews and share ideas and come up with what they think about the offerings. But the services that we do, we send weekly newsletters on offerings. As I said, we promote webinars by industries for specific offerings. Blogs we host and let our community write their thoughts and all of that. So we just facilitate that. We facilitate that exchange of ideas and networking between our investors. So we're not just a place where you see like a depository of all offerings, but we also really want to encourage an active investors community where ideas are shared and you can help your fellow investors. I don't want to use the word hand-holding, but that's pretty much what is needed in this space, because right now equity crowdfunding is very under the radar. You can't see a lot of analyst reports on Wall Street or Forbes or whatever in the financial press, and what we found is needed, or the gap that we want to fill in the industry, is that aspect of validation of, let me ask a friend, let me ask somebody so I can know more about those offerings. And we thought the best way to do it is to source it to our community so investors can ask themselves.
Absolutely. I love the analogies that you gave with the digital platforms. I also envision the investor meeting. I used to go to these back rooms at a steakhouse, and there'd be 20 people there, the founder up top with a PowerPoint on a video screen, and live investments would take place. It would be a strong return in many of these events. But because the investors were building off of each other, one would point out,
sure, and someone else would answer that question.
So I could picture that type of a dynamic happening directly on your platform. I could see how it could benefit the founders and issuers, as well as the investors, by providing more of that understanding, more clarity on the deal.
And exactly, and this is what I found a lot. Just being in New York, there's a lot of those townhouses and investment panels, and where you bring VCs and PEs to judge on panels, very much like a Shark Tank. And my thought process behind it was, why only the guys from the VCs and the PEs are exposed to that? Why can't just retail investors be exposed and play on the same level playing field as these titans, as the VCs and PEs? The people who don't get the invites to an an investors panel at a VC's office or at a PE's office, right? Why can't we just do a Shark Tank for the masses, so to speak? So, we have 100 million households in America who can qualify, because right now with a Reg CF, you don't have to be an accredited investor. So we have so many potential retail investors who can actually be players in that space. I was thinking equity crowdfunding enables that. Now they can have an opportunity to invest in small, promising companies in the next Apple or Google, but they still lack the resources, right? So finally, from a legal standpoint, they can be just like the big boys of Wall Street, like the titans. They can get on the next Apple or Google, but they still need the smart money behind it. They need the extra diligence, and they need the extra resource, and that's something that I think is magnified by the power of the community. So if we have a large community, we're going now to have close to 10,000. We're still starting, but close to 10,000 between all our users on the website and followers on social media and subscribers to our newsletter. So between all those channels, we're getting to those numbers, and I think the value proposition is, as much as we grow, it's going to the value is going to grow exponentially, because it's user-based content. So the bigger our network is, the more valuable the community's insight is going to be to the investors.
That makes perfect sense. And how did you build up that user base of 10,000? What were the processes there? Was this message resonating with the retail investors that you're pointing out here right out of the gate? Were other, were FINRA regulated platforms, portals hopping right on board? How were you guys able to market?
So first, we're starting. So we're still a startup ourselves, and we're getting to the 10,000. We have 10,000, as I said, across all the channels. So it's
Sure.
not just users, it's users and followers and subscribers, just for transparency. But it's currently, as I said, we're started. We did not invest heavily on marketing yet, and it's been really word of mouth, and the word is spread first from the issuers, right? The issuers, they were the first ones to really pick on the value. So, we contacted some issuers and said, hey, we want to list you guys. I think you're going to benefit from our community reviewing and rating your offering. And they loved it. They were like, the issuers were the easiest ones to buy into it, right? To convince. And once, the issuers got into it, then it was a word of mouth. And from there, also, we have a weekly newsletter, which got picked up, and more users just heard of it, as I said, from word to mouth. Again, we're still in the early stages and growing, but from what I've seen, even though our marketing dollar spent is very minimal at this point, right now we're self-funded, we don't have any investment. We would probably do an offering ourselves. We're in that market, we're in this industry, so we got to practice what we preach. But currently, we're like where we are right now, we're still self-funded and do not invest heavily on marketing, and yet we see a very tremendous increase in followers, subscribers, when you think about it, that it's solely based on word of mouth.
And it definitely speaks to the interest, to the demand from retail investors for these early stage opportunities. And like you mentioned, wanting to get involved in high growth opportunities. I like the story of getting involved in Facebook in the first couple years and what it would have looked like during a liquidity event. The democratization of these investment opportunities to everyone, and including the discussions and peer-to-peer type recommendations in a digital platform, which of course allows for scale. And that definitely is reflected when I hear about social sharing, peer-to-peer marketing being the primary tool to get to your 10,000 users.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And partnerships, portals, maybe perhaps lawyers, CPAs, different professionals that work in this space regularly. Have they had a positive response? Have you been able to build strategic partnerships throughout the process thus far?
Absolutely. So the goal is to have all the portals in that space as strategic partners with us. So basically, the goal is for us to be the listing place, the marketplace, and share data with the portals, because the data that we share with them helps both us and the portals. It helps the portals because we can get them quality leads for investments, and because we validate the offering, it's not only that we drive traffic, but it converts to actually dollars spent on those investments, because it's not only exposure and eyeballs, but we actually help validate the offering, right? Because if you list an offering on one of the portals, it's hard to make the offering stand out, and it's hard to actually pick up. You have the Form C that you have to submit, but it's really hard just from the company page, without the webinars and the reviews and the ratings and all the services that I mentioned before, to really pick up if it's a good investment opportunity or not, right? And that's the missing part that we're trying to bring to the table, and what makes us good partner with the RegCF platforms.
And in an industry where collaboration and these different relationships are key, I imagine it's been warmly welcomed by different operators in the space. Would like to ask more about data. I know for us, data has been instrumental in planning marketing campaigns, whether that's audience data and being able to target historical investors of a given portal, of a given category across various portals. Also just the analytics as a whole, if we could get a better idea of which verticals have been the most successful during which months of the year, different types of demographic breakdowns of the investors, so we can prospect to a stronger degree based on geolocation as an example. The more data, the better. It gives us findings to act upon. Have you guys been able to find meaningful data across founders and or investors?
Absolutely. So first, an undertaking that we're working on right now is to build a database that would aggregate a lot of the data points from all the different platforms, which, as you can imagine, it's a hard undertaking because there's 60 or so platforms, each one with their own database, etc. But as you said, we really want to realize and point out who the addressable target market is, the demographics of the target market, etc. So this is something that we're still working on. We're still building our databases and our analytic tools. So currently we have our own beta analytic tools that we can see who the investors are on our platform, right? But we want to have those collaborations so we can get an industry-wide data, and not just from, obviously there's equity crowdfunding groups and industry groups that would gather this data, but we want to be the funnel where we get the data on an industry-wide and not just through our marketplace or through our website. So this is an initiative we're working on. And from what we see in terms of where the industry is, so first of all, the industry grew significantly, right? So during COVID, we saw, I think it was 70 something million, around 70 and change million asset contribution in fiscal year 2020. And then we hit that landmark by Q1 of 2021. So we've seen a huge spike or a huge increase, whether it's because investors are just stepping away from traditional market and from regular asset classes like stock and bonds, or just because more time at home in your personal computer, you're finding out about all those portals. We still don't know so much why, but we do see a correlation that the COVID year 2020 and first quarter 2021, that industry of equity crowdfunding has exploded. In terms of the data, what we see is that it is still a challenge to trickle down to more than just the trailblazer demographics, right? So you have the trailblazers, you have the young, and you have, the high income but still young professionals. And where I see an opportunity is where it's going to grow to something that, a 60-year-old and with 3 kids would be comfortable in investing in equity crowdfunding, despite its illiquidity, despite the long time horizon, because they see the potential. So that's when this demographic is going to be comfortable with equity crowdfunding, just like the young demographics were early adopters. They already have experience with crowdfunding from Indiegogo, from Kickstarter. So to make the switch to investment crowdfunding when they were already doing donation-backed crowdfunding, but for somebody who used to just invest in, put their IRA and have their traditional brokerage account, to all of a sudden allocate a portion of their regular investment that they do in stocks and indices to a equity crowdfunding, when that will happen, that I will know that the industry has matured, has arrived, right? So just on that, we want to start an initiative where we would go to a financial network. So we're thinking about CNBC or Fox Business or Bloomberg, and have a 30-minute segment where we educate. As I said, we're big on educating because I think we're still, equity crowdfunding, we just celebrated its 5th year since the Title III has passed, but it's still very under the radar. So we're thinking about doing a 30-minute segment to educate the audience, Main Street America, who doesn't have too much experience with equity crowdfunding, about this opportunity, about how we democratize opportunities and investment, and how with $100 or $150 disposable for an investment, you can be on the same level playing field as a VC or PE or an angel. So we're going to educate viewers of those financial networks on that, and then we're going to highlight 5 or 6 of our issuers and show how issuers from diverse industries, how their story falls within the story of equity crowdfunding. So basically how, through equity crowdfunding, founders who would normally be underfunded, right, whether it's minority, a female-based founder, they'll get their spot in the sunlight, right? They'll get their spot in the sun. So, and not just founders, also different industries that would normally not be looked at from VCs and PEs because they don't meet a certain investment criteria, or because the PEs and VCs don't recognize a need that the larger investors population would recognize, right? So for example, I've seen issuers that come up with disruptive technologies that wouldn't be picked up by a traditional VC or PE because the implementation can take longer. They're looking for a shorter, time for their ROI, and because it's industry that, for example, we have a company that disrupts. It's called Carmichael. They're disrupting spam calls. So a VC or a PE, for example, right? They don't get. They have secretaries. They don't get the spam calls are getting filtered. They don't need a technology app to filter those spam calls. But I think regular folks who can be investors now, because it's only $100 to participate in the offering, they understand the value of it. They understand that can be a big business and a big industry. So, that's an example of an offering that would be picked up, and it's not necessarily because it's a certain industry like cannabis or gambling or anything that a VC or PE would refrain from investing in. It's technology. It's definitely an industry that they can invest in, but because of the specifics, the audience would be better, from the community at large. And this is what I think the power of equity crowdfunding is, because it's not just the people at the top of a PE or a VC making those investment decisions. It's really democratizing the investment process. It's really like the crowd, potential consumers and clients of the product are investing in it, and people who are more familiar with the ask that the company, that the offering is trying to solve, with the solution that they're bringing.
That's definitely in line with what we've been seeing as well. And we're big Karma Call fans. Love how you brought up that example. And we've seen communities, we've seen future customers directly fund these type of deals, directly as you're outlining, where it may not have gotten the same attention from the larger VC world, may not have fit their criteria. Meanwhile, not only was the funding goal hit, it accelerated the milestones that business was looking to achieve thereafter. So powerful vehicle across the board. And want to get into some recommendations from founders, and based on what you've seen, maybe even sharing some of your experiences, but just notes that you can provide in terms of actionable insights for our listeners. And the first is around testing. I look at marketing, I look at entrepreneurship as a series of tests that are later optimized and scaled. What types of tests would you recommend to anyone listening in today for their own marketing, their own equity crowdfund campaign?
Testing in what way? Can you elaborate?
Yeah, this could be a way to roll out their equity crowdfund. And marketing channels to test out, messaging, what have you. This could be towards their larger growth as an organization, but different tactics, different strategies that they should attempt for their own company.
I would first say definitely come prepared, right? That's the key. So first, before you launch your offering, you can do a soft launch or a test the water launch. So before the campaign actually goes live, you can see if you get commitments from the community, and then anticipate, have a goal in mind, anticipate what marketing initiatives you need to take in order to reach your goals. Know what platform works best for you, not just in the terms of the fees and the cost, but more in terms of each platform. They have their own audience. Each platform has, you need to know how many issuers you're competing with in that platform. So know which platform is best suitable for your product, and and also you want to know if like what type of offering you want to do. You can do Reg A, you can do Reg D, you can do Reg CF. So you need to consult a CPA, you need to consult an attorney. You have to come prepared. That's one thing I've seen, that companies that try to wing it, they did not get to the goals. But the companies who came prepared, they knew, I'm doing Reg A, I'm doing Reg CF. The industry is still nascent, but there are different types of service providers for different needs. For example, there's Valmore Group. They are a broker-dealer. They're not a platform. And what they do is they actually will do a website, like a white label website, just for your offering. So you don't have to share your offering with 50 or 60 other issuers on the platform. Some companies, that's a valuable proposition. So do your research in terms of marketing, in terms of where to place your offering, and have a strong marketing team, right? You have to have a very compelling video, to have very compelling images, and then use an agency. You can use us, of course. I recommend it, to list it with us and have us, promote the offering and push it. But it's important, it's not one of those things that if you build it, they will come, right? If you just have an offering and you just put it in a platform, you won't necessarily bring investors other than your friends and family to the offering. It has to be advertised. You have to keep on advertising it on and on and on, and you need to know that you're going to get the commitments beforehand, because a lot of it is psychology, right? Nobody wants to be the first person putting $100 into something, right? It's much easier to get $100 investment after you've already had 50,000 before. So make sure you have the first dollars from your network, right? Make sure that you have a good marketing team to promote it, to promote the story, word of mouth to people, and then just trust the process. Use either listed on Crowdfunding Finder, use an agency, talk to a lot of the platforms. They themselves promote the offerings, and also their tactics. So there's strategy involved in it. So for example, Reg CF, as you know, just in March recently, the cap was raised from $1,070,000 to $5 million. If you're getting to like close to $1 million and you want to raise it to $5 million, maybe don't raise it to $5 million right there. Try to get FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. The people would be afraid that the offering will be oversubscribed and they won't be able to invest. So keep it as $1,070,000 before you transition to the $5 million. See if you get more commitment, even if you capped already. And then once you build on that, then transition to a $5 million. So like everything, you need a good team and you need consultants, and we're there to help anyone who needs.
Very nice. And we're committed to higher success rates industry-wide, so that sentiment definitely resonates with me and my team. And those are great recommendations in terms of building social proof, bringing these other partners to the table. Big fans of Itay and the Valmore Group as well too. Definitely appreciate that shout out and back it as well. And I think my next question, which is a larger theme, you look at Reg CF and stats for 2020. About 20% of the goal of the issuers hit a seven-figure raise. That $1,070,000 mark, as you mentioned, it increased in March, of course. But to me, that means about 20% of campaigns are going to hit that seven-figure level. I know that accounts for issuers who had a $200,000 $1,000 goal, $500,000 goal as well. But I generally speak with founders that want more. Either they're doing all right on one of these portals and they want to take it to the next level, or in some cases, it's just not happening for them. What recommendations do you have towards optimization, towards taking a campaign that is not producing the numbers and regrouping, pivoting even a bit in the offering, in the marketing of that raise to then pick things back up and hit much larger deliverables?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. So the barriers of campaigns to break the 200 level and get up to the cap that we see relates to the 2 points that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the exposure of your campaign, right? Because right now the campaigns are competing. If you're in one of the large 3 or 4 platforms, you're competing with a lot of other offerings. So A is exposure, and B is really to validate it to investors, right? To validate the validity of the campaign, the strength and the potential of the offering. And I think that this is where our solution comes to play. This is where, we host webinars, we do newsletters, we send email notifications to our investor network. So our investors always, if you want to promote your campaign, the one thing you always want is it to be top of mind of investors, right? Because if investor, Jason, you're an investor in a platform, but you see 30, 40 different offerings, then you go, around, do your daily routine, and then you forgot about like a company that you saw an hour or 2 hours ago, right? Yet, like, just because you saw a company offering in Republic, you're not going to invest right there. You have to see it a few times. You have to read about it. You have to get email push notifications. You have to see a webinar, read about it in a newsletter, and then maybe after it was reinforced in your brain, it's almost like a song in the radio that you hear 7 times, 8 times. All of a sudden, it's your #1 hit, right? Whether you liked it beginning or not, now it's catchy. Now it's in your brain. It got your attention. So, #1 is that's kind of like our value proposition. We maintain it in the investor's head, right? Top of mind. And B, it's really like validation. Like if it's featured on a webinar that we do, or in a blog, or a chain, or a chat, and our network of investors who are sophisticated review it and give their thumbs up, so that somebody vouched for it, right? And the campaign has the stamp of approval. Obviously, if we do a campaign, as I mentioned, that we want to do a segment on national TV, if viewers, investors see that an offering was featured on CNBC or on Bloomberg, it automatically provides it with that, that they're the real deal, right? They're not just trying their luck and going to a platform and saying, you know what, the cost is not so much, let's start a campaign. Now they're the real deal, right? There's a dedicated call center, people asking, there's Q&A, there's an investment panel, you can see who the founders are, not just see their bubble face on the website, but you can actually feel who the founders are. You can see them talk and explain their company. So I think all this package, all of it together, all those different channels, TV and newsletter and webinar, keep reinforcing it to investors and keep validating it to investors. I think that is the missing piece that will help the 80% to reach what the 20% have already done and get to that million. With that said, as you said, a lot of those offerings, they're not looking for $1 million. They're pretty much, they want, their target is 200 to 50. But I think that the potential, that there's a huge growth potential in this industry. This industry has not yet arrived, right? It has not yet fulfilled its potential, and I think the missing aspect, as sure I repeat myself and I've said many times in this conversation, is the aspect of trust or validation, right? Of here are our community can vouch for it, can they did the due diligence, they did the research, they sourced it, they shared their ideas. Now, I'm as a retail investor, I feel comfortable, that I can put $100 towards a campaign.
And in terms of putting that amount of time towards the campaign, coming prepared, being able to have all these pieces set up to generate enough awareness, enough exposure, shifting with it to get where it needs to go. Let's say they're part of the 20%, they're passing 1 million, 1.07 million, maybe they need to refile. As many issuers we work with have to go through that process, and now they're shooting at multiple seven figures, even as much as 5 million. What can they do to scale? As you emphasize, the industry has not arrived yet. There's a lack of awareness, lack of education, hence the need for your platform and why it is so favored among your audience. What can issuers do today to scale? What have you seen to be as trends among the top issuers?
So in terms of funding, the $1,070,000 and even the $5 million number no mean that they're not the only source of financing, and they're not the cap, right? So you have 5 million, but then if I'm correct, you could probably correct me, I think with Reg A it's up to 30 million, right? So even if you cap
75, yeah.
Oh, 75, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So it is so even if you cap on Reg CF on $1,070,000, as you said, you file again, you move to 5 million, then you can file another Reg A, you move to 75. And even then, in tandem, while you run your Reg CF campaign, or any equity crowdfunding campaign, doesn't have to be Reg CF, it can be Reg A, Reg D, you can still solicit funds from an angel. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not either or, right? I'm thinking you can do equity crowdfunding to A because the company is very early stage, maybe seed or pre-seed level, so it does equity crowdfunding, but also because they want to validate and they want to get their clients or would-be clients to be their investors. So it's not just in terms of this is the only money that I can get, and I don't want VC or PE money. A lot of companies opt to go to equity crowdfunding because for them it's a proof of trust that the community, not a single investor, that the community believe in their product, and it's a way to acquire clients. So they can do that, and then if they want to scale on top, they can also do angels, and I even think that to go to an angel investor after you have accumulated or if raised 500,000 on equity crowdfunding, it helps your cause as a founder, your company, to go to an angel, because right now you showed that you have the ability to raise funds. So you're not a newbie, you're not novice, right? So I think the way I look at it, equity crowdfunding is stage one, but it's not mutually exclusive to other sources of financing, and they're complementary. It's not, I'd like to look at equity crowdfunding as a disruptive way to fundraise for startups, but it's not a disruptive way that's going to make other forms of financing obsolete. I think it's going to go hand in hand, and if anything, reinforces getting funding from other sources as well.
All stacks up, it all adds to it. There's sayings in the industry such as always be raising, and those angel conversations could even be occurring in between rounds. We definitely speak a lot of the same language. And as we're coming to the completion of this episode, want to ask if there's any closing thoughts, closing messages you'd like to leave the audience with.
I think we touched on a lot of them. I'm a big believer in this industry. As I said, with my background as an entrepreneur who always thought about new ideas and always hit the wall of financing. Uh, Once I heard about equity crowdfunding, and I thought, oh my God, it's a dream come true. This is really, words such as democratization of the investment. I feel like they've already became cliches, but I don't see it as cliche with equity crowdfunding. It really is disruptive, and it really is democratizing the process, because people, like, a lot of people, I would say retail investors, middle class, who were not able to write $1 million check into an investment. Now they can, with $100, they can be on the same playing field, right? And the same thing for the founders, not just for the investors. Founders who were usually just not looked at, right? They didn't fit the criteria of what a startup that raises funds should look like. Now they can go directly to their community. So whether it's a minority or any other type of, if it's a special, like a gaming offering, right? And a VC and PE is not interested in gaming, you can go to the gaming community, right? There's a lot of people who would be clients, now they would want to be investors as well. So I think that the whole democratization aspect of it, not only that it's fascinating and exciting, I also think it has a huge investment potential. So I think it's a good way for people like you and me to help people do well and do good at the same time, right? Like,
And, Itay, this has been the same type of discussion we have internally that I'm so glad we're able to echo here to the audience in terms of where everything's going. Completely agree with what you're saying there. If anyone's listening in here and would like to continue the conversation, if they'd like to be featured on Crowdfunding Finder, or just like to connect at all, maybe they're in New York or want to set up a video chat of some sorts, what is your preferred method of communication? What's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Yes, thank you very much. You can reach out to us on info@goldeaglefunding.com. Gold Eagle Funding is the legal name of the company, or to me personally, Itay.Golan@goldeaglefunding.com. So it is ita.golan, Gold Eagle Funding, not Golden Eagle, goldeaglefunding.com.
Excellent. Well, Itay, thank you so much for joining us today. Been very insightful for me and my team, and some of our listeners, I'm sure, are going to have some very warm feedback immediately. I appreciate you hopping on.
Thank you very much. Likewise. Thanks a lot, Jason.
Excellent. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll see you next time. Take care.